All right, there's already been a lot of moving parts, so it delayed in making the severe weather video. There are storms ongoing with brief tornado touchdowns near Freeman, South Dakota. So that's north of Yankton and southwest of Sioux Falls. So that's the near-term severe weather issue, and that's going to be kind of bowing east. Intermittent quasi-linear convective vortices can form in this Boeing segment, and it's producing 80-mile-an-hour winds in places. So that's the big talk at the moment. But we're currently under, so areas of South Dakota, Nebraska, and northern Kansas, including my hometown of Manhattan, are in a tornado watch right now. Some strong tornadoes are possible with these storms, and so right now it's an enhanced risk with a 10 to 15% chance of a strong tornado and a 10-15% chance of a tornado. And that tornado watch, the air is becoming a little more volatile over central Kansas. There's kind of a makeshift dry line. There's a couple of residual boundaries from the storms that went across northern Kansas last night that's still coming into play. The warm front that's kind of in the I-80 vicinity is another factor that's coming into play. So it's a complicated storm system that's unfolding, but this is all setting the stage for Monday, and we'll get to that in a moment. When I look at the HRRR model, it looks like storms will fire down into central Kansas, and there can be some supercells in that. I don't think it's going to be as widespread, but I think, and on one of the graphics, I kind of have this purple line that's kind of an arc. Anything there north, I think, is where there's going to be an enhanced chance of larger hail and tornadoes and supercellular a little bit longer before becoming a mesoscale convective system that could produce near derecho type conditions if it fully materializes. And right now, I think that gusting out does look probable as that low level jet goes in and that maximum instability starts to dwindle down a little bit, and it'll become a little more elevated and then become a windbag system. But there will still be some large hail even with those winds. So that's why I said it's going to be like derecho conditions, but not technically a derecho, because it'll probably last maybe 100 miles. Monday, they have us in a moderate risk for severe weather for essentially central northeast Kansas into southeast Nebraska. Now it's a 15 to 29% chance of a tornado and a 10% or more chance of an EF3, EF4 type storm. And the limiting factor is going to be how fast the boundary layer destabilizes after the system that moves through tonight. That's one question, because the models are kind of pointing that it may not even be out of the Kansas City area until 6 in the morning. That could slow this down a little bit, and the HRRR, I think, is being a little aggressive on timelines. They're saying storms firing just north and west of Manhattan up into the Lincoln area by about 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. I think that's a little aggressive. Could it happen? Yes. I can't say that's not possible, but I think there's still going to be just enough of a cap from that boundary that's going to take a little more time for it to destabilize. But then those boundaries could come into play, and if any storm can route across those boundaries and it reaches, especially if we're dealing with Cape exceeding 5,800, which is like astronomical. That's like very unstable atmospheric conditions. So it wouldn't take a small cap could be eroded with that easily. The other question is going to be how fast are things going to go upscale? Because if it goes upscale too quickly, then it's going to be wind and hail. There will still be some embedded tornadoes when you have those vortices that are in this kind of a convective system, but we're not talking your traditional supercell tornado if that materializes. So if the cap is too weak with that level of instability, it could just go upscale right out the gate. So that's the thing. Probably the only reason they don't have a high risk for severe weather right now is that variable right there. With what I'm seeing and reading the tea leaves and looking at the models and comparing the different trends, like your CAPE, your vorticity, significant tornado parameters, dew point temperature, I do think that there will be a couple of pronounced semi-discrete supercells in that development, and I'm thinking 5 to 7 p.m. for Manhattan area, Manhattan to Junction City, and then Topeka probably about 9 o'clock is what it's looking like right now. By the time it gets, at the absolute latest, it's going to go upscale and just be a line probably about that 9 o'clock vicinity. So if the storms move a little bit faster and that cold pool doesn't establish itself across the whole line, we could be talking significant severe weather with tornadoes and giant hail being the mode all the way to Topeka, Lawrence. But that all depends on if those storms form early and how fast the cold pool takes over everything. Because once it goes upscale, that's going to happen relatively quickly. But in the end, I think there are going to be a couple significant tornadoes in Kansas tomorrow afternoon, early tomorrow evening. I think the bigger story, and when all this is said and done, is going to be when it goes upscale and the high winds and hail, which will be happening in the stronger updrafts at about the same time. So it's going to be catapulted hail. And that kind of reminded me when I'm looking at some of these parameters, even though it's not going to be a derecho of what happened in Wichita, I believe it was in June of '91, if I remember right, where they had 80-mile-an-hour winds and baseball-sized hail for 45 minutes, and it impacted my great aunt and great uncle's house. I mean, nearly destroyed it because the hail, two sides, it went through the siding, it went through the wood. It was just the support frame of the house that was left after that hailstorm, and the roof was essentially gone. So can that scenario happen in places? Yes. It's like, I can't say it's not possible, because this is going to be there's enough cold air aloft, there's enough to create a cold pool in with the updraft that scenario could unfold. But I think in the end, earlier in the day, strong to violent tornadoes can be possible if the storms can be supercellular and stay semi-discrete, which I think that's going to be focusing, I'm going to say, Salina to the Nebraska border, and then draw kind of a general boundary towards Topeka where it starts pinching off. I think that's going to be the area of the best bet for supercells or strong to violent tornadoes. A little more conditional as you go a little farther south. Even though they have the moderate risk all the way down that far, I still think it's conditional. Once you get south of about 56 highway in Kansas, I think then it's a highly conditional situation. But if that cap is weak and you have 7,000 kilojoules, which one of the models is showing, South Central Kansas could be in play, and then they would have the better shot of supercells because they aren't going to be in that upscale part as early, because there will still be the low-level jet to kind of offset that. So that is the forecast I have for the next couple days. Stay weather aware, northern Kansas, Nebraska, with a tornado watch ongoing right now. I think storms will start firing soon. There's a little blip closer to Russell, and I'll have graphics in with that, and I'm going to try to get them in order since there were some things that came in after the fact. So I'm going to try to get this out